Okay, so this is another one that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time and just haven't. They're all probably going to be like this. I don't know why I keep prefacing videos with that. But this is Skybreaker, a knockoff, a slightly undersized knockoff of Unique Toys Dragoon, which I did already look at Dragoon. And while I will say I think the plastic quality on this is probably just slightly below the quality that's on Dragoon, I think this is a better figure. Mostly because, pardon, there's more detailing, especially when we get to the robot mode, better paint deco, and it's slightly smaller, so it looks a little bit better when you put it next to, say, Unique Toys Challenger, which I don't have Challenger. I have the oversized knockoff in Nemesis colors, so we're not going to be doing a direct size comparison there because they're, it's like undersized versus oversized. But I like this figure better. And also because it was a knockoff, I felt a little bit more comfortable doing some custom work on it. So it may not come through here, but will probably come through a little bit better later on. But I actually added a bit of like a weathering effect to everything except the front hip skirts because they're like a soft plastic. So I just kind of did my own little weathering effect, like experimenting with that. And this does actually, or at least did, come in a battle damaged deco that you could get. This is not that version. This is the original release of Skybreaker that was not weathered or battle damaged, and I added that effect myself. And honestly, I think this looks a little bit better than what I saw of the battle damaged one. Not trying to say that I'm super great at customizing or anything like that, just that I feel like the battle damaged version, they kind of went a little overboard with the weathering, to the point where it kind of was disrupting the look of like a lot of the molded in textures and stuff. So I kind of like this better just because it's a more subtle weathering. Of course, the downside to that is you can't really tell that it's weathered. Point is, this is basically Unique Toys Dragoon. So it's got the same weird Cybertronian jet mode that is, or not, maybe not Cybertronian, but it's got this strange little jet mode thingy. It looks awkward. It doesn't really hide the robot, but it gets the job done. And I don't really know what else to say about this. Dragoon had like a coppery color, whereas this uses more of a gold, and I think the gold looks a lot better here than the copper colors did on Dragoon. Also, while this thing is very big and difficult to keep on camera, it is slightly smaller than Dragoon, so it's a little bit easier to keep on camera. You have the cockpit section, which actually has this, it opens it to nothing, but it's got that goldish color for the cockpit, which looks nice. Some other nice little details that are painted here and there. But again, a lot of the texture and stuff we'll really get into when we get to the robot mode proper. And I don't really know what to say about this vehicle mode. I think for what it is, it gets the job done. It works just fine. It hides the robot bits fairly successfully, even though it doesn't really try to. The head is still just hanging out back there, but whatever. I like, though, that the hands become these, or the arms become these like little rear turbine things, and these bits fold up to completely cover the hands. That's nice. And yeah, it's a pretty decent looking vehicle that has some junk on top. The sword tabs into the there's this little tab here and this little gap on the sword that pegs into. So that's how you can store the sword in vehicle mode. You can kind of store the shield in vehicle mode, but it doesn't really work that well, so that's why I didn't really put it on. Basically, I think you can kind of peg it into where the gun's pegged into, but then it becomes a question of what do you do with everything else, so I just leave the shield off to the side. But you do have the fusion cannon up top, and it fills in this section pretty nicely, I feel. You can remove it if you really want to. It's actually got the little chain plugged in over here just to keep it from dangling, but this just pegs in. There's a peg here, pegs into this spot right here, and that fills in all of this stuff. And since we're here, let's try and see if we can get the... Oh, nope. That just straight up does not work. The peg will not reach. So, can't peg the shield in there. Oh well. But yeah, that's how it looks without the fusion cannon plugged in. It, in my opinion, at least, which I feel like is fairly universal, looks way better when the fusion cannon is plugged in, because that fills in that gap. And I'm not going to bother plugging this back in, because we're just going to do size comparisons and then move on to transformation. This is sitting a little bit weird. It's, yeah, like Dragoon, it's a little bit fiddly with the placement of some things, but it is what it is. Okay, so let's just go straight on to those size comparisons. Bring in our Voyager, which, again, for anyone who missed it, Artfire is now gone, so he's been replaced by Buzzworthy Dinobot. Here is our Tall Deluxe, Samus Amiibo, and regular size deluxe figure, so you can see that while this is undersized, it is still quite large. It's it's a big Megatron. Not the biggest Megatron I have, but it is big. Now if we bring in the biggest Megatron I have... Oh, come here, you giant heavy thing. Here we have Megatank, or Monocrat. I never really remember which one's the company name. But here are the two of them together, and Megatank is, I guess, has a smaller overall footprint, but that's because it condenses into more of like a box, whereas this kind of spreads out. So yeah, make no mistake, despite how things look, this is significantly bigger and denser than this. There is Megatank back there. Boy. Such a dense and heavy fellow. But finally, for our most important of size comparisons, here is Skybreaker with the Duck Tank. Okay, so before we do the transformation proper, just as a reminder, if you like this video or any of the other videos that I've done on the channel and you would like to support me, I do have a Ko-fi and a Patreon, links to both at the end of the video as well as down in the description. Otherwise, you could always do the typical YouTube thing of like, comment, share, subscribe, and so on. With all of that out of the way, let's transform this guy. First thing, I'm going to fold up the little landing strut. Now, going to pop off the fusion cannon, and again, this was plugged in back there, but I already unplugged it, so it's that. And then you want to take this peg and flip it so that the smaller peg is now facing down and the bigger peg is facing the back. There we go. Also, there's a little button here. If you push that, fusion cannon lights up. Couldn't really access the button in vehicle mode, but we will in robot mode. Now, oh boy, okay. To start, gonna unpeg a bunch of stuff along the side here, so just kind of bring that up to get it out of the way. Take this piece, and there's this little tab here that unpegs from here, and then fold this out, which allows this to come down, and there you can see the fist now. So with that done, going to unpeg this piece. It pegs into the side here. There's like a little tab there, so unpeg that. And now this whole section here comes up. It actually tabs in down here and right up here where it meets the gold piece there. So push up to untap that. We'll just fold that back the rest of the way to get it out of the way. Now, with that all done, the arm tabs into the underside of this panel here. So you want to pull down to untap the arm. And now this can rotate down and kind of come out. And this piece will fold down. And there is the arm all straightened out. We'll deal more with that later. But we want that arm out of the way, so now we can do the rest of this stuff. Because, oh boy, there's a lot. I'm going to take the wing, and these two panels tab over each other, so you kind of push this down and flip this up, and you can see there's the little tab that tabs into the underside of this. So these all fold around like that, and this will fold in here, but currently there's not enough space, so we're gonna have to move this out. So you want to have this up a little bit so you have the clearance to kind of accordion this out, and you want to get this whole assembly around this piece, which isn't too hard to do, but you want to make sure that gets around. Now you can rotate this a bit so that we have the room to fold this in. Then this comes up, and this just sits along the back like that. This will now rotate around like this, and these the folded up wings will actually tuck inside of this thruster piece, like so. This whole assembly now, this comes down, this rotates down at this hinge and will rotate around like this, because that will become the foot. But before we can have that fully become the foot, we have to take this panel that was covering up the forearm and rotate it down, and this will go over all this other stuff, and this will come down and just kind of cover up that thruster a little bit. And finally, for the lower leg, this whole section here, this panel is on like a little spring, so you want to hold that up, rotate this around, and get it around the foot. And this comes in and will tab over that part of this panel, and that will finish off that part of the leg. And now for the rest of the foot, you want to take this piece here and untab it, rotate here. There are these two little rotational joints here. You want to rotate each one out about 90 degrees. Then rotate this around, and there's a little peg that'll tab into there, and that will kind of fill out the robot mode foot. And that is the lower leg all done. For the upper leg, with this piece folded in, you want to keep that folded in because that'll give you the clearance you need. This fin can just fold in like that. Now, this assembly here can rotate, and you want to keep this how it is because you need the clearance to get over this section here, but this rotates around like so. And now with that rotated around, this piece can rotate around. And then this all comes in, and this will tab in here to make the upper thigh. And with that all done, now this piece swings in and tabs in, pegs in right up. There you go. There you can see the peg hole right up there. So swing that in, tab that in, and then bring down the, straighten out the leg. And this, we'll leave it rotated out for now. But there is one leg. I'm going to do the other leg off camera because there's just so much to go over. All right, that's 2 legs done. Now we can start working on the rest of this stuff. So let's see. Let's get this whole thing taken care of. So these bits here tab in right up here. So pull that out, and there you got the little slot. There's the tab. Pull those out. And now these gold pieces here are tapped in up here. So you want to pop those out. There you can see where it tabs in. Pop those out. And we'll hold off on folding them up for now. But with those untabbed, now this assembly can move up a lot more, because before it really couldn't. Then you want to bring the legs down a bit. And now this piece here is actually the butt flap. And that whole thing swings around 180 degrees on this assembly and pegs into the back. Now the legs can come down the rest of the way and rotate to give us a proper lower body for the for Skybreaker. And here you've got the flexy, rubbery front skirts that I did not paint because they're rubbery. So now that's all done. And bring down these pieces here that were the sides of the fuselage section. The small flaps go in first, and the big flaps go in on top of that, and then this whole thing rotates around. Same deal here. And for anyone who's familiar with Dragoon's transformation, this is pretty much exactly the same as Dragoon's transformation, so that's why it looks familiar. Now, going to just kind of wiggle these shoulder pads out of the way and untab these pieces up here, which I need to raise the camera for a bit. Okay, so these pieces tab in up here, so you want to wiggle these out, and there's a little tab thing right there, and there's a, it's hard to see, but there is a tab right in there that sits in. So I'm going to untap these, and now there is a slider back here, right back here. So you want to slide these sections down, which is a little stiff, but it does work. Slide these down far as they can go, because there is actually a little thing here, a little channel that the armature will sit in. So just wiggle and slide and move that out, and now you've got them further out and kind of out of the way. Just bump the light. Okay. Now, the torso here, this piece untabs from in here, and this piece will untab and open up. There you can see the tab that goes in there. This now can rotate around. This opens up all the way. The nose cone splits, and the tip goes in like that, and then it closes back up. And this all rotates down, and this will close back up over the nose cone section, like so. This can come down, and then we can work on this, because this guy is a little bit more finicky in terms of like the shoulder section transformation, because on Dragoon, these bits here, this butterfly motion, could go backwards as well as forwards, but here, for some reason, they decided to shape it like it's kind of squared off. So this cannot go past this point, which makes it just a little bit trickier to get all of this torso together. But those down, you want to take the neck, and it's actually on a little slider, which is hard to get moving quite right, but you want to slide this back, or up, I guess, in this case. I'm just going to pop the head off, screw it. So slide that up and put the head back on. Then the head can, we'll keep it that way for now. So with that done, this folds in, and this folds in, and this whole thing basically kind of collapses in on itself at the same time, because you want to get these armatures sitting in here, which is so much easier with Dragoon because these can simply go backwards a bit, but since you can't go backwards here, you kind of have to do it all at once. Also, I forgot to mention, this piece has to fold down like that, because this will go through this little head panel section here. So get all this lined up and kind of wiggle it all together. Now, what'll happen is, with all of this situated, this will come together, and then this piece will tab in back here to kind of lock everything together. That locks the torso together and everything's good. And now these panels will tab in to the chest, so that locks the rest of it together. The arms can come down and just kind of rotate the biceps and get them straightened out. And like that. The shoulder pads rotate around on these ball joints and sit over the shoulders because they're shoulder pads. Head can rotate back around. There we go. And then the back, these bits flare out, this comes up, and this whole thing just kind of sits on the back. These don't exactly peg in, but it's fine. And that's it. There is Skybreaker in robot mode. And let me bring the camera back down a bit and push the robot towards the back a bit because he is a rather sizey fellow. But smaller than Dragoon. I feel like it is still important to point out that this is an undersized figure. So yeah, here is Skybreaker in his base robot mode, and he looks utterly fantastic. I also like to flare these skirts out a little bit. Like Dragoon, he does have the issue of looking a little bit skinny because of the sculpting, but with a little bit of creativity in posing, like if these are in and if these are like flared up and you're looking at them from like dead on and everything is just like, you know, like if things aren't angled quite right, he starts to look a little bit goofy. But as I said in the Dragoon video, if you just get a little bit, like play around with those hip skirts a bit to kind of fill in this section, flare these out a little bit, bring the shoulder pads down and angle them forward just a bit, like that bulks him out very nicely, and it looks really good. I feel like this looks so good. Dragoon looked great, don't get me wrong, but Skybreaker just adds a bunch more textured details throughout the entire thing, in addition to some added paint details. I really like the gold over the copper that they were using. It's difficult to do a real direct comparison with with Dragoon, because I haven't had Dragoon for a very long time. But I think, as just like a basic example of how much this adds, I think Dragoon had this for the shoulder spike. I don't know if that section was painted at all, and if it was, I'm pretty sure it was kind of flat in there, but here you can see it's nicely textured. You got like little bumpy ridges up along here. There's just a lot of really nice added sculpting in like the midsection and stuff. It's a very, very good sculpt. Like the base sculpt is good as on its own, but like just the added texturing that the knockoff company did with, like, you know, you can see on the gauntlets there too, and the legs. So there's like a lot of extra molded texture. There is a lot of extra paint, and it makes him look incredible. And here I feel like is where you can really see the difference too in that weathering that I amateurishly did on my own, because this is the hip skirt that I didn't do, and you can see this is kind of what the basic figure looks like. But then you get to like the gauntlet where it's a little bit stained and pitted looking and stuff, which this was just me taking panel liner and just brushing it on with like a paintbrush, letting it sit for a few seconds, and then wiping it off with a paper towel, and just whatever stayed on. And I think this ends up looking really nice. I really like how that adds just a little bit more visually to the figure, and also really helps to push that idea of him being a Megatron who's kind of been through it, which I think was kind of the point at this point in the movie. So yeah, he looks great, and as I said with Dragoon, I love how that transformation works to basically make the vehicle mode completely disappear. Like, it may not be too much of a secret that the vehicle mode transforms into a robot, but I feel like, barring a few very specific details that, you know, you'd kind of need to be looking for, there's nothing about the robot mode, even from the back, that makes it seem like this actually transforms. And that is super cool. And again, he looks so good in this design, like with the added texture and with the weathering. It looks so good. But he is not quite done. We do have to do one more thing. This is, I don't count this as an accessory. Got to give him his fusion cannon. The fusion cannon also looks great. I mean, it's the same design, really, that Dragoon had, but with just a little bit more texture and paint. As I said, you push that button, and it turns on the light. And with that little peg folded down, this pegs into the forearm. And then this piece comes around and just pegs into the back of the shoulder. And there you go. Now he has his fusion cannon, and that is a complete Skybreaker / Megatron, and he looks so good. I absolutely love that. Now, the head. The head is a huge difference compared to Dragoon for a couple of reasons. One thing to note, though, is I did modify mine. I went in, I popped the head off the ball joint and just went in and carved out a little bit from the front there. I didn't carve so deep to as like make the ball socket not work anymore, but the reason I carved that out is because when you initially get this guy and the head is on there, like that's basically as far down as the head goes. And that is kind of meh. So by carving that extra bit out, now the head can go down a lot further, and that really helps to sell the idea of him being bulkier, because like with the head up like that, it just kind of looks a little bit, I don't know, a little scrawny, but like tilted down a bit. It makes that neck narrowness disappear, and it just looks more intimidating. So I like that. Also, I believe the Unique Toys version of Dragoon did not have ball jointed head. So the head itself, and I'm taking it off because it's easier for a couple of reasons. Again, the sculpt is amazing. Like all this intricate sculpt work inside there. The paint looks really great. I had a bit of a paint QC issue on mine. You might notice that the red down here doesn't quite match the red up here. That's because this faceplate, and yes, it is a faceplate. This faceplate, that red wasn't painted on there, so I had to add that myself. And I don't know, I may go back now that this is set for over a year and add a little bit of the weathering on top of that so that it blends a little bit better. But I don't know, it is what it is. I'm also trying to remember, I think I may have painted the eyes, because the eyes are part of a thing. Because the reason this guy has a faceplate, whereas Challenger, I keep saying Challenger, whereas Dragoon had that like head swap gimmick, is because there's a little switch in back, and if you push that switch, the eyes light up. And that is super duper cool. And you can access that by just popping the top of the head off. There you've got the batteries and all this other stuff going on. And this is magnetized, so it just snaps on, and that's not coming off unless you pull. So I like that. But that's how they did that. So like they couldn't fit the Unique Toys gimmick of like lifting the head up, rotating the faces around, and popping it back in. But like the sculpt looks amazing, and then you can do the open mouth plate thing. But first, it's a little involved. Basically, you got to pop this off, and these pieces here. Actually, I guess I can't do it because I can't do it now because I did that. Well, here, got a screwdriver. So these are screwed in. You need to actually take these screws out. And the way I had this guy set up for a while is I just left these screws out because you don't really need them. They're not essential for keeping the head together. All they do is keep these little like side tusks in place. So with the screws out, like these still do what they need to do. They still stay in place. You can just leave this on and no one would be the wiser. But anyway, this is the unfortunate thing about the way this works. But you have to take these and pop them off. They just peg in right here. So you have to pop this off because you need clearance to get to these pieces. So what you want to do, well, actually first we got to swap out the faceplate. So this faceplate just slides off like that. Then we can bring in, here it is. Then we can bring in the other faceplates that isn't covered. Peg that in. That's an image. And now, grab my spudger here, and take these pieces and just kind of leverage them off. You don't want to twist because they're like a kind of squared off peg, but have them pegged in like this, So what you want to do is pop them out, swing them around, and peg them in this way so that they're facing forward. Because these are basically meant to be the mouth plate as it's like slid open. So now that's how that looks, and then you can bring these back in and push these back into place just along the top there. Put the little head thingy back on, and there we've got Skybreaker's open mouth plate look. And like, I really like how this looks, but the problem with this is you can't really transform it into vehicle mode this way because these pieces really need to fold in so that the head can fit where it fits in vehicle mode. Otherwise, things are kind of clashing and pushing against other things, so that sucks. But like, this sculpt looks so good. That is a nasty looking Megatron face, and I love it. And of course, you can light up the eyes as you do. And it's really, really cool. It's just unfortunate that these don't fold in. You could, if you wanted to, take these little open mouth plate pieces off and just leave them off. And then you could just more freely swap the face plates in and out, because like this doesn't really want to come out with these pieces there. So it's a process to swap the face plates around, but I kind of can't argue with how cool this looks. Also, as long as you leave those screws out of these pieces up here, then it's less of a hassle. You still have to disassemble the head a little bit to switch to the faceplate, but it's way less of a hassle if you don't constantly have to remove screws. But this can go back on the little peg, which wasn't even on camera. It just pops back on the ball joint, and that's it. There is Skybreaker. Get those eyes lit up with the face uncovered. And I'll just turn off the light real quick so you can see. The eyes do glow pretty well. Turn this off too. Yeah. I think they glow pretty well. So there is all of that. I'm going to turn this off to save on battery life, but we still have the accessories. So we saw the sword before, and this does peg into the hand. There's a peg only on one side. I don't think it really makes a difference though, because this does actually work in either hand. It's just like, I think this is meant to be like a secondary thing for whatever hand isn't holding onto it with the peg to like grab onto. So this will work in either hand if you want. There are also these tabs on the back of the shoulder here that the sword can peg into, so you can peg it into either one of those. And this can be a little bit fiddly, but it does peg in. And so with that pegged in, there he is with the sword kind of slung over his back. That looks cool. There is the shield, and the shield is a cool looking shield. It looks pretty nasty. It's got a lot of nice molded details in it, and I don't know, I just think it looks cool. This can peg into the forearms, or if you want, you can peg it in back here. And that will just peg into the back and sit back there. And then you can also, if you want, take the sword and peg the sword into this tab up here. So that way you can keep the sword and the shield tucked away on his back. But of course, I prefer to have him holding everything. Now, much like Dragoon, this peg is a little bit thick, so I did end up shaving it down just a teeny tiny bit to make sure it could fit in here and not get stuck. But this just pegs into the forearm, and then this shield is also connected via a ball joint, so you get a little bit of extra wiggle there, which can be great to make sure it works in certain poses. So give him his shield, and we'll give him his sword. So the hands open up, and this reminds me, I never went over articulation. I should do that when I'm done with this. So the hands open up, sword tabs into the palm on either hand, and then the fingers just close back up around it, grip it very nicely. And now we have Skybreaker with all of his stuff And that's an intimidating looking Megatron. I really like that. I hate the movie. I absolutely despise the movie, but it had some pretty awesome designs. I gotta give it that. Now for the articulation, I'm just gonna leave the accessories on. The head, as you saw, is on a ball joint. So you get some up and down. The down is much improved if you do the mod, because otherwise the down is just like up and then down like that. You get some side-to-side tilt. As far as I know, that side-to-side tilt is not affected by the modification, so that's just how it goes. And it can rotate, as you saw. The arms, the shoulder, or rather, the shoulder armor can go up like that, and it's also on a ball joint, so that can get out of the way. So the arms can go all the way around, but the shoulder armor does kind of, yeah. There are certain things where it's not going to look right. You can kind of work with it a little bit by using that ball joint and hinge, but it's not going to look right from every pose. But they can go around all the way. They can go up quite a bit. Actually, let's remove the shield so that it can go up that far, though it does look a little bit silly. But it can go up quite a bit. Down is actually weirdly limited. The downward motion on the shoulders is hampered because of the sculpt. And it's got more to do with the sculpt of the torso. Because here, there's like a little bit of a cut, so this can come down, and it comes down pretty well. Here, that cut isn't, like there's no cut there for the bicep, so this just kind of clashes into there. So like this arm can come down further than this arm. And that's a little bit annoying. But that's how it was designed. I could go in and like carve out some plastic on the inside of the chest armor there, and I may still do it at some point, but I haven't. You get a bicep rotation just above the elbow, and then you get the elbow, which can bend to 90 degrees, a little bit past 90. Of course, the problem with this is due to the gauntlet's shape, that swivel is going to be a problem if you don't bend the elbow, because it will clash into stuff. Additionally, there is this joint here for transformation, so if you wanted to swing the arm back like that, you could. I don't know, it's a thing. The wrists do rotate, and there's also a hinge that allows them to go in. So you can kind of, and that rotation is in front of that other bit, so you can get a little bit of weirdness going on there. The fingers are individually articulated, which is a step up from Dragoon, and also he's got like these rather sharp claws. So you got a ball joint at the base of the thumb, so it can like rotate, go up and down. You've got the knuckle there. Ow. Pushed right into that little claw divot. The fingers are not ball jointed, but you do get a rotation hinge here. It's here, here, and here. Is there? It looks like... No, there's not. Okay. Because it kind of looks like there's a... zoom in a little bit here. It kind of looks like there are actually two hinges here, but it's just the one along the knuckle. And also the fingers are all the same length, which is kind of a shame. But you get a bend there, a bend there, and a bend up there on each finger. Now, there's one thing that definitely sets us apart from Dragoon, because yes, it's been a while since I've handled Dragoon, but I do know that Dragoon's fingers were not this articulated. So that's cool. In addition to that, something to mention is the arm that has the fusion cannon on it. It could be either arm. It can plug in either arm. But the arm with the fusion cannon, you cannot make use of that inward joint on the wrist, because the little gauntlet flare thing will knock into the underside of the cannon. So you actually have to rotate the fist first in order to have it clear that, so that you can do that. So that's a little bit but that was a problem with Dragoon too. So it's not this figure's fault. The waist. There we go. The waist does rotate, and it can do a full 360, but you kind of want to get these side skirts out of the way. Otherwise, because these are spring-loaded up here, I don't really think they needed to be, but that causes them to go up, which can get them in the way. So you want to just rotate, like hold those down if you rotate it all the way around. The hip skirts are on springs and ball joints, so those can kind of go up and back and wherever you want them to. The front skirts can hinge in and out like this, and they also can move up and down, and also they're very flexy, so they'll just kind of get out of the way. But you can hinge those around however you want. The legs can go, also the back skirt. Forgot about the back skirt. It is, despite how it pegs in, it's also on a little movable hinge here, so this can come up a little bit. It can't go up past this, so unpegging it won't make a difference, but that goes out a little bit. So now the leg can swing forward, not terribly far, and the hip skirt actually comes with it because it's part of that joint. It's a little bit weird, but hey, it works. So yeah, this is where the legs are kind of where the articulation suffers, because that's as far forward as the leg can go, because this clashes into the piece that is holding the front skirt in place. It can go back that far, so yeah, you can't really go forward and back that far. It can go out to 90, but the ratchets aren't really strong enough to hold the leg in place. It's not like the figure's not going to fall over, but it doesn't, he's not going to do high kicks. You get a thigh swivel, which is a little bit blocked by the geometry back in here going out, but if you bring it out a little bit further, it can go all the way around. And then the knees, they can straighten out like that, and then fold down to quite a ways. So it's a really nice deep knee bend. It's just a shame that the leg can't go forward. But again, that's more Dragoon's design. And then the feet, they can tilt left and right a bit. And then if you wanted to, you could use this transformation joint to kind of go forward a bit. But stability is an issue, so I suggest keeping it like that. And also, these toes are really loose. I feel like I've tried thickening these up, and it just didn't work for me. I might have to try again, because these toes are nice and solid. Like, I have to put effort into moving them. With these toes, it's like... And these toes... it's not... Yeah. So, that is where the articulation is at. But very, very cool figure. Looks incredible. And I just wish that the leg articulation was a little bit better, that the arms could come down a little bit better, and that it wasn't quite so painful, or not painful, but so annoying to swap the faces around. I do think that, in my mind, the light-up gimmick for the eyes is way better than the face-swapping gimmick that Unique Toys did, so I think it's not a terrible trade-off, but I do wish that that there was a way for them to make it not quite as irritating to to try and swap between the open faceplate and the closed faceplate. Oh well. Okay, and gonna have to zoom out all the way because this guy is pretty big. Hi, Astrid. Hi. She's peeping at me now. Let's do our size comparison. So we've got our Voyager, because Artfire is gone. Hi, Astrid. She's on my lap now. Trying to reach around a camera and a cat. There's our Tall Deluxe, Samus Amiibo, and regular Deluxe. So there you can see just how enormous Skybreaker is, and yet still smaller than Dragoon. I believe Dragoon is about a half a head taller. So I think Dragoon... it's making this really difficult for me. I think Dragoon comes up to like maybe about there, if that makes sense. Like, it's just a little bit taller. Oh, there she is. Hey, Astrid, leave those screws alone. Actually, leave everything alone, Astrid. Alright, well, since she's not on my lap anymore, let me get these size comparisons out of the way, because we still have a little bit more to do. Rid of these. And bring in the even bigger Megatron. Here is, you can't see because there's a cat in the way, but I am bringing in Megatank. Or Monocrat, whatever. Astrid, hey. Hey, come here. Come on. Get out of the way, honey. Hey. I just said leave that stuff alone. Come on. Oh, Astrid. I love you, but my goodness. Right, so here... Oh, boy. Astrid, come on. Come on. Get out of the tent. There you go. Come on. Come on. There you go. Boy. So here we've got Skybreaker with Megatank. And yeah, Skybreaker is very big, but Megatank is very bigger. I also think this is kind of cool because like both have this kind of slightly damaged, not damaged, but like a slightly weathered effect. And even though they're made by different companies and the design aesthetics and transformations and everything are drastically different, they don't look terribly out of place next to each other because they're both like big, intimidating looking Megatrons where like, yeah, Megatank or Monocrat has less texture because he had, not less texture, but he has more like non-textured surfaces at the forefront, but like he does still have plenty of texture in the molding, and so it's just, I don't know, I feel like they work really well together even if they're not anything vaguely similar in terms of like design aesthetics. Yes, hi Astrid, I love you too. Let's reach around and grab this. Come here. Come here. There we go. Oh, he heavy. He big and he heavy. Okay. But finally, let's round this out with the size comparison that I know everyone really wants to see. So here we've got Skybreaker. Really? There we go. Come here, Astrid. Come on. Yes, I love you too, but chill out. So yeah, here is Skybreaker with the duck tank. I did it! I finally made a video on Skybreaker. I've had this guy for probably like close to, if not past, 2 years now. And I've been wanting to make a video on him that entire time, and I just never got around to it because he's a big, he's a big figure. The transformation is not bad, but like because of the size and the way he spreads out, is like I knew it was going to be a little bit of a pain to do on camera, and it was, but I did it. And also, no one really seemed all that interested in this stuff back when I first got it, so I wasn't sure how high a priority to make it. But the point is, I finally did it, and this is a really cool figure. As I said at the beginning of the video, the plastic on this guy is, I wouldn't call this like cheap knockoff plastic. It doesn't feel super brittle or anything like that. So I don't think that's something to really be concerned with, but the plastic does not, like from what I remember from Dragoon, it does not feel quite as sturdy as Dragoon. But that being said, it's got like a lot of the same articulation drawbacks that Dragoon has, but has, in my mind, a better head because the articulation can be more expressive thanks to the ball joints. Even if you don't carve that thing out, it's still got a little bit more expressiveness to it. It's got individually articulated fingers. The sculpting on this is way better than Dragoon. And the face sculpts, like the unmasked face sculpt and the masked face sculpt, both look so much better than Dragoon. One of the things I think Dragoon had going against it in terms of the face sculpts is the way that the eyes were, the way that the area around the eyes was sculpted and the way that the eyes were painted made them look extremely tiny and beady. Here, he does have smaller, like he has small eyes, but they're more recessed and the area around them is a little bit more closed in around them. So even though the eyes are, kind of small, they don't look beady because it's not just like, here's a little dot of an eye with a bunch of open space around it. And I think that definitely helps. But also just the sculpting is on like the face is so good. The unmasked face looks so good. So much better than what we got with Dragoon. And yeah, it's totally worth it, especially at a fraction of the price. But of course, Skybreaker's been kind of out and gone for a while now, so I have no idea if you can find this guy anywhere anymore. I feel like he's probably out there somewhere, but yeah, if you have the choice between this and Dragoon, unless Dragoon is significantly cheaper, I'd say go with this because it's a better size scale-wise to fit with a lot of other figures. Also, that makes him a little bit easier to fit on a shelf. The sculpting is better, the painting is better, whether you get the clean version or the weathered version, or get the clean version and weather it yourself. The only downside is those shoulder joints that don't fold backwards, whereas the Unique Toys version does that, and it gives you some backwards butterfly motion in robot mode, and the plastic quality feeling just a little bit lesser. But I don't think those drawbacks are worth skipping this figure over. But anyway, I've gone on way too long. So that has been whatever knockoff company made this, Skybreaker. Love this thing. What do you think of this guy or Unique Toys Dragoon? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I've still got a cat on my lap. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And I wonder what the next one will be. Probably not something this big and complicated.